Hello everyone and welcome to Breckcast, Breckland Council's podcast, our new way of reaching our residents, our business community and our value partners. Throughout our podcast series, we will be exploring the work of the Council, lifting the lid on how we deliver the services you rely upon, discussing that delivery with our partner organisations across the district and further afield, and exploring the issues that matter to you. I'm Stephen McCarthy from the Breckland Communications team. Today we are talking about devolution and local government reorganisation. I'm joined by Breckland's Executive Member for Devolution and Local Government Reorganisation, Councillor Bill Borrett. Bill, can you start by giving our listeners a brief overview of what the government means by devolution?
Well, you'd think that by devolution, the government would mean giving powers to local areas. But in fact, what they mean by devolution is regional government. They want to create a series of strategic authorities of around 1.5 million people across the country. This was tried by the last Labour government and called regional government and was, as a result, hugely unpopular. So exactly the same plan has come back, but this time it's called devolution. But it is very hard to see any powers coming down that actually justify the name that the government's given to this proposal.
The other terminology that's being thrown around at the moment is local government reorganisation. What does that mean in layman's terms?
That is basically getting rid of two-tier government across all the shire counties. So there's about 40 authorities where you have district councils like you do here in Norfolk with Breckland and a county council that sits over the top. The government has decided that it wants to remove all of this and replace it with unitary government across the country. This would mean the abolition of Breckland. It would mean the abolition of all the other councils in Norfolk, including the county council, and much larger super councils that would then be charged with delivering the responsibilities that hadn't been given to the new strategic authority, which covers Norfolk and Suffolk. So it's a huge change and would involve a huge upheaval and the abolition of the more community-focused councils that have done such a very good job to date. The two together, devolution and local government, will mean a completely new landscape for Norfolk and Suffolk. So the regional authority, or the new strategic authority, would be Norfolk and Suffolk. It would be led by a directly elected mayor, and it's proposed that the elections for that mayor would happen next May. That mayor would then take on a lot of the responsibilities currently done by Breckland and Norfolk County Council and take them up to the mayor. So, for example, Breckland currently does strategic planning, and many people will have been affected by the call for sites of the local plan. That will be going up to the new mayor, covering the whole of Norfolk and Suffolk. And some of the things currently done by the county council will also go up to the mayor, like local transport planning and the police and crime commissioner would all go up to the new mayor. And then underneath the mayor and their strategic authority, you'd have unitary councils. Now, these unitary councils, the size is yet undecided because the government has said, we'd like to hear your opinions on that, and I'll come to later what Breckland is proposing. But these unitary councils would then take on the remainder of the responsibilities that hadn't gone up to the mayor. The government has not decided the shape of that yet and given us an opportunity, shall I say, to help design that. But basically what they've said is, you can't do nothing. The status quo is unacceptable. This is what they've said to all the councils. So we want to hear what you think it should look like. Now, obviously, in Breckland, we had a vote in full council quite recently in March, and the members decided that they'd actually prefer to protect the status quo. But given that that is not an option on the table from the government, the members have proposed a 3-unitary model for Norfolk. Now, the main reason that the members have said that they are extremely worried about the proposals is that the two things are almost guaranteed to happen. The first is your council tax is going to go up And the second is that the decisions are going to be made further away from your local community than they are at the moment. And I think these two huge concerns are what are driving the Breckland members' agenda.
You've mentioned there that 6 of the 8 Norfolk authorities support that 3 unitary model at Breckland, voted for that in a special council meeting back in March. Despite the shortcomings, why is the 3 model the best option for Breckland?
So Breckland, as you say, have proposed that Norfolk be divided into 3 unitary authorities. There are other proposals that it be a single unitary authority for all of Norfolk, or there be 2. But as a result of bringing the existing councils together, you get something called council tax harmonisation. Now, Breckland is very proud to have the lowest council tax in England and obviously the lowest council tax in Norfolk. So when you pull councils together who have very different council taxes, there's in other places where there has been local government reorganisation already, like Somerset, Cornwall and Northumberland, they choose set a new council tax based on an average of all of the councils. And Breckland being by far the lowest means that our council tax will be revised up to the new level, and there will be no increase or improvement in services for members. And when we look at Norfolk, the highest council tax by a huge amount is Norwich City Council, which is over £100 more than the Breckland one. But in the west, the authorities that combine the western side of Norfolk, Breckland, Kings Lynn and West Norfolk and North Norfolk, have the lowest council taxes. So we feel that if we were to form a unitary authority with them, the impact on the Breckland council tax would be less than if we were included with all of the other authorities, the more high-spending ones. Also, Breckland technically doesn't have any external debt, whereas Norwich City Council, which is a very similar size to Breckland, has nearly £300 million worth of debt. So we don't want to be responsible for their debt. Over many years, Breckland has run the council in such a way that we have built up an investment portfolio. Now, that commercial property portfolio produces as much income for Breckland residents as we raise from council tax. Now, that is one of the reasons why we're able to keep council tax as low as we do, but still invest and spend the same amount of money on services as similar councils do elsewhere in Norfolk. Now, those assets would have to be shared amongst all the new councils. So we are really going for what we feel is the smallest and most local unitary that the government might consider accepting. And that is why the 3 unitaries for Norfolk option is so very important, to protect as much of the community work and the assets and the council tax that we have invested in over the previous 30 or 40 years. So it's not an ideal situation because it will mean an increase in council tax. But of all of the options on the table from the government, I would say it's the least worst.
You've gone into significant detail on the financial considerations, and those financial considerations are motivators for the government, and also they are special considerations for us in terms of harmonisation of council tax rates and our lack of debt as an organisation, and also the commercial investments that we have as well. Looking at the service delivery side of things, you've mentioned already that the 3 unitary model would keep decision making and service delivery closer to communities.
That's right. Yeah.
How would this model ensure that rural and smaller communities are better served?
The option of the 3 unitaries would give us basically a council for West Norfolk, which would, as I say, include parts of North Norfolk, the current Breckland, and Kingston and West Norfolk. And that is a predominantly rural area characterised by villages and market towns. Now, I think then there's a great opportunity for us to continue with our delivery models that we have through Breckland, which has obviously the 5 market towns, and we don't have a large urban centre that would then suck all the resources into it that we might have with a larger. We don't have to fight for Norwich for resources. And it's very much the delivery model that we have in Breckland that's been so successful. So I think it would deliver the most seamless change of protecting services in rural areas and local market towns without a huge amount of upheaval. And we would be working under the new council very closely with the officers from King's Lynn and West Norfolk. And I think there's a real opportunity for us to, as it were, almost double down on the being able to be community-led and deliver our services in the local community. And I think that is absolutely vital. And when we're looking at, for example, health, which will be affected by this, part of what we are engaged with our health and wellbeing partnerships is a prevention agenda around working within local communities. And I think that keeping the main council as small as possible means that we can focus on the local communities and keep the decision making as close to them as possible. And that would mean that we would then be able to get more focused and better local services because we're keeping the decision making as close to communities as possible. The 3 unitary model for Norfolk, whilst it is not perfect, is the closest we will get to what we have. And that works really well for Breckland and the residents of West Norfolk. So we will have local decision making. We'll have less threat through council tax harmonisation for a huge increase in new council tax, and we'll have less disruption. So I think that for those reasons, the 3 unitary model is the one that the members of Breckland have recommended, bearing in mind, though, that they would still prefer the current situation because the current organisation, because that would protect the level of council tax and keep it lower. It will go up. There is a school of thought that if you had one super council for Norfolk, and that was tried relatively recently in Somerset in 2021, that you would be able to leverage lots of savings. And there are people going around saying this, that if you have one big super council for Norfolk, then it will cost a lot less because you won't need lots of duplication. The only problem with that is it isn't true. So in Somerset, where they've gone for a single unitary authority for the whole of Somerset, this April they had to get special permission from the government to put their council tax up by more than the 5% cap because they have not been able to deliver any savings, and the reorganisation costs have caused chaos within the authority. In Northumberland, where they get a single county unitary, that also happened as well, and in Cornwall, where they have a single county unitary. So even though in theory going to one huge super county council for the whole of Norfolk does sound very attractive, but for example, there's 8 authorities in Norfolk. If you're going to merge 8 IT systems, 8 HR systems, in theory, it sounds like you'll make huge savings, but actually the complexity of untangling all of that and all the existing contracts and stuff means that in some cases, 10 years after merger, that's not been successfully completed, and the price and the council tax has not come down as a result.
In talking about district and county councils, what will happen to town and parish councils in this model, Bill?
Well, I think the most interesting thing is that the government has said very little about that, and they've certainly not allocated any money to the idea of change in town and parish councils. The one thing they have said is that there'll be an opportunity to form community councils. So at the moment, the proposals are that town and parish councils are unaffected and there'll be no change to the way they work and there'll be no new money for town and parish councils. However, this issue of community councils is quite interesting because a community council can be formed by more than one town or parish councils merging together. So it does look like there is a further, maybe future development of so-called devolution, which would be merging some parish councils together to make bigger councils. But that's not explicit. It is now, they're setting up a framework where it is possible for parish councils to merge, and they would be called, as I say, community councils. So there is, at the moment, very little to see in this space. So I think, if you are a town or parish councillor, this process will probably leave your authority or your council unaffected.
One of the things that we have tried to do around this is to seek public opinion. We have a consultation that has now been open for several weeks. Can you share any insights on what the public has told us so far about these proposed changes?
Yeah, absolutely. And the feedback is, in a nutshell, that people are concerned that they are going to be paying more and getting less. And I think that's a really, really important issue. So there is the feedback around a feeling that decision-making will move away from them, and that they're worried that there may be an increase in their council tax. I think that it's really important that we do spend some time listening to the people of Norfolk, because all the proposals have come straight out of central government. There has been very little local consultation, and this isn't being driven because people in Norfolk are saying that they want change. This is entirely top-down. The government has launched in my opinion, woefully inadequate consultation that they are running themselves. And they are having one face-to-face consultation event for Norfolk and Suffolk, which is in Ipswich on the 3rd of April. And that is apparently satisfactory for this enormous change. So, in Breckland and with a number of other councils, we've launched a consultation which is badged at Future East, and I hope that there'll be a means on the podcast of accessing that.
When we release this, the link to go along with that will be available.
So please click on the link. And there is a questionnaire there for you to fill in online, which is very straightforward. And please share it with as many people who you think may be interested, because it's only by harnessing the opinions of the public, whether they're for or against, that we can get an accurate picture of what it is people want. And then we can use that to try and help make our case to the government to shape the future landscape of Norfolk through local government. And so this is something that may not be top of your list, but I think as time moves forward and the government's timetable gets closer to delivery, it will become something that people are much more interested in. And now is the time to have your say, because hopefully we can then use that to shape what's coming next.
So you've mentioned the government's timetable and what's coming next. What happens when the consultation closes? What are the key milestones between now and the final government decision?
So the government has our proposal around the 3 unitaries. They say that they're going to give us some feedback after Easter, but we don't know what sort of feedback that might be. They're going to then announce this September what the shape of Norfolk will look like. There's no criteria about how they're going to make that decision, and it's a decision to be made by the minister. So we're not going to be able to say, given the measuring the cases against the criteria, because there isn't one. So when the minister announces what he has decided, and again, that is why the feedback of the residents is so important, because we would hope that would influence the minister's final decision. So in September, we should know what the landscape is going to look like. And there will then be shadow authorities set up in 2026, and then probably elections in 2027 to the new authorities. Now, the mayor, which I was talking about at devolution at the beginning, for the new strategic authority for Norfolk and Suffolk, that's going to happen a bit more quickly. So in September, the government are going to announce the structure of the strategic authority, and then there will be an election for the mayor in May 2026. So the mayor is going to be imposed on top of the existing structure. And again, this is going to have an effect on your council tax, because the mayor will be able to levy a precept to support the mayor's office and the new strategic authority. So you're going to have, when this is set up, you're still going to have your parish council, you're still going to have your Breckland, your district council, you're still going to have the county council, and then on top of all of that, you're going to have the new strategic authority led by the mayor, who will also charge a council tax precept. So that, and that's going to come in 2026.
So we've talked about financial considerations, council tax harmonisation, etc. Just for clarity for listeners, can you sum up what council tax could look like post-devolution, post-LGR? Or even throughout the sort of the transition phase?
Absolutely. So the first thing that's going to happen is that the government's proposal that we get a directly elected mayor for this new strategic authority. So this mayor for Norfolk and Suffolk. So the proposal is that there would be elections in May 2026 for the new mayor. And one of the first things the mayor will need to do is set up a council tax precept to pay for their new strategic authority. So that means that you will still have your parish council or town council precept. You will still have Breckland or your district council precept. You'll still have the county council precept, and you'll still have the police's precept. But on top of that, you will have a new precept to fund the mayor and the strategic authority. So that will come in then. So straight away, there will be an increase in your council tax. The second part of this is, if we get local government reorganisation, and that means that we get new unitary authorities, as I've said, because Breckland is the lowest in the country, council tax harmonisation, it's where when you merge councils together and you get a new council tax based on the average council tax, I mean, Breckland in particular will be hit again with another council tax increase to the new unitary authority. And it's important to remember that that won't come with any increase in services. That's just to harmonise. And one or two lucky authorities may see a reduction in their council tax because effectively the Breckland residents are subsidising them. So there are two distinct impacts on your council tax as a result of the government's proposals here. And that is why the Breckland members, the councillors at Breckland Council, said that they would prefer the status quo rather than embarking on this, because it looks like the public will end up paying more but not getting anything for it.
Finally, Bill, what is your message to residents? You've already touched on the consultation, but why is it important that their voices are heard in this process?
It's really important for the public to get involved, because the final decision is going to be made by the minister. And therefore, the more we can evidence what it is that the people of Norfolk want, the more powerful our arguments will be. You know, an argument could be made that councillors would be against change because they want to feather their own nests. But actually, this is far more important than that. And I think that if we can harness the views of residents to demonstrate what it is they want, it makes our argument so much more powerful. It's not really the councillors' opinions that's so important, it's the residents' opinions. And it would be really helpful to be able to have as many people as possible respond to our consultation so that we can make a really strong case to the government.
Well, everyone, you have been listening to Councillor Bill Borrett, the Executive Member for Devolution and Local Government Reorganisation, talking about central government's plans for exactly that, devolution and local government reorganisation here in Norfolk. I've been your host, Stephen McCarthy from Breckland's Communications team. Thank you so much for listening.